You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in. Like I said before, this is a no-frills kind of operation. Yeah. We're just people. We're hanging out. We're getting to know each other. It's just cool.
What coffee cup are you drinking out of? Let me see.
I don't know. This is from my mom. It's Harris Ranch Inn and Restaurant. I don't even know what that is. It's from my mom's cupboard.
So we're both originally from Maine. So we what we would call the cupboards.
No.
Cupboards.
Oh, cupboards. After you pack the car.
Yeah. There it is. Yes. They're my cupboards.
You done messed up, Aaron.
Oh my God. So what my coworker I work with the most, his name is Aaron, and it's a nonstop substitute teacher skit with him.
Oh, fantastic.
The name's Blake.
Blake.
What does he say when he flips the table over and he's like, absolutely ridiculous? He flips
like,
the table
and churlish or something like
churlish. Loquacious.
And insubordinate. Yeah. Jake Quellen.
Oh, I love that skit. It's the best skit of all. I think it might be one of the best.
Watch it. Yeah,
I watched it recently. I watched it like 3 months ago and it's still cracked up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us once again. And if you haven't heard some of our previous episodes, please go back and take a listen. I'm really excited to have our guest today. She spent a lot of her previous career in digital marketing and worked with Coors, so she has something in common with our co-host Rick. Also, her first live concert was Prince during the Purple Rain tour. I can't believe that. She wasn't even born then. She wasn't even born yet. That's impossible.
I don't believe it.
And last but not least, she was currently the Chief Customer Officer for Voodle. Voodle, ladies and gentlemen, gents, ladies, please give us a welcome round of applause for Miss Rachel Lanham.
Hello.
Crowd goes crazy.
Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We finally got through my stumbling introduction, so that was cool.
Yeah.
Check.
Rachel, it's such a pleasure to have you here. We're so happy to be talking to you about Voodle and some of your other experiences, of course. But the biggest question I have for you is, how did you get involved with remote work in the first place?
Yeah, so we were talking before the show about how remote work is something that's been going on a long time. A lot of people have had home offices, people like you that were in sales. But for me personally, I have been, I guess, an office dweller in all of my jobs. And Voodle itself was originally a virtual reality company called Pixvana and had been around for several years. And the virtual reality market was not materializing, and our investors and our team and leadership, we knew we needed to do something different. And so we made the choice to shift our entire business, huge pivot, to Voodle, which is really just the idea of basically TikTok for work. So bringing short video into the workplace. And we made that decision.
TikTok for work. If you can't see me, I'm trying to do a TikTok in the video. TikTok for work. TikTok for work. Voodle,
well, all
voodle,
of those
voodle.
things that you do in your private life and the way you communicate in your private life, it makes its way into work, just like Twitter kind of became Slack. And so we're kind of part of the group of many startups that are trying to figure out what that looks like. But anyways, we made that decision to make the big pivot February 1st of 2020. And within a month, we were in lockdown. And we actually were originally based in Seattle. And so that was like one of the early areas where COVID lockdowns were going on. And so we had to immediately go remote, of course. And as that kind of lockdown experience was progressing, we realized what we were building could be a great tool for remote teams specifically. Absolutely. We decided to just go fully remote. So we're going to be moving offices because we wanted a fresh start as Voodle. And we just decided, nope, no office. People can live anywhere and we'll figure it out. And we want to become as expert as we can on best practices of remote work. And we want to help remote teams stay connected. So that kind of became our rally cry. And since then, we are now more than 50% of our team doesn't live in Seattle. Wow. And our CEO is actually just a complete digital nomad and has lived in 4 or 5 different cities in the past year or so, just kind of going from Airbnb to Airbnb. So we're really living the life, I guess. And for me, particularly because my role is Chief Customer Officer, when we first pivoted, we didn't have a product. We were building that product. And so obviously we did not have customers. So my job was to talk to potential customers and share the idea of Voodle with them. But my other job was to figure out how we were going to shift to remote work. And try to become that expert and read. And of course, the GitLab and all those kinds of places, I started to just really try to learn and share with the company what the best practices for remote were. One of the first things I read is you need to put your culture down on paper, or not paper, but digital paper, and really write it down. You're not going to just pick it up by being in the room with everybody. And so that was my first project, is our culture book, which is publicly available. And that through building that in collaboration with the team, I was really able to kind of put some words around what our culture is and what it means to succeed in remote work. And we're still learning. It's a work in progress. We're not perfect, but that's just been a passion for us. And for me personally, I took to it. I really like working from home. I am a people person and I get energy from other people. So I am an extrovert, but I like to just be at home and get my deep work done. And I look forward to like post-pandemic where there's also those times to really connect in person as well.
Did you hear what she said? You got to have a culture statement. A culture statement. It's literally the first thing we advise. We advise everyone, if you do not have a culture statement public, write one today. If that's the only thing you can take from this podcast, well, there's going to be lots of things you can take from this podcast, I'm pretty sure.
Well, and you guys need to look at our culture book and give me some feedback because it's a living, breathing document that continues to grow.
Sure. But need to have one. It's so
happy
important.
To do that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, culture is everything. Look at where we stand right now. I mean, sometimes I think the term culture is overused, but
big time.
The work culture, as they say, has completely been turned upside down in this country. And I think the three of us and the millions of other people who are on the cusp of this shift in culture.
Did you say shit show, Rick? Did you say shit show?
This shit show in culture. Yes.
Okay, because there is a shit show right now, and everyone's just trying to like fake their way through it. Then they're trying to say, "Oh, culture." The reason why I hate the word culture is because it's used when things are not going well. For example, we need everyone back to the office because we're just missing that culture. Man, were you even measuring your culture before? You weren't even measuring your culture before. Get out of here with that shit. You weren't even aware of your
culture.
You weren't even aware of it.
You sure as hell didn't write it down.
Right. Do you have a culture score from before the pandemic? Do you? Very few people do, I agree. Culture is one of those words. We try to use employee experience as much as possible because we feel like it's just a little bit more descriptive, Like, what is your experience like as an employee?
That was one thing I learned, I think, probably from the GitLab guidebook, but it's like culture.
Shout out Darren.
Shout out to Darren Murph. Yes, he's one of our advisors. We love Darren. That what it really is your values and how work gets done. Those are really what you're talking about, is how does work get done each day? What do you say is important to you? And that's really what culture is. It's not obviously the snacks and the ping pong tables and all the, perks. But I think of the past, that's really what culture was. It was like, what's your culture? Oh, we have happy hours on Thursdays and we have free lunch on Wednesdays. And it's like, no, that's not your culture, but it's kind of like a crutch. And I think when people say it's missing or it's eroding, it's like, oh, it's those little moments that happened when, we're standing around the coffee machine, or we all walked down to the coffee shop together, or we all had first Thursday happy hour, or whatever it is. People are trying to describe that, those little intangible
those moments.
points of connection. And then they blanket, like, call it culture. So I love your term of employee experience, because it's like, what is your experience? How does work get done? How do you form relationships and personal connections with people and build trust?
Well, that makes sense, Rachel, because you are a customer experience person. So, you're right there. You're like, yeah, I guess that does make sense. You're right there. You're right there. I do have a follow-up question a little bit towards what you were saying earlier as far as you all going remote recently. Are there any things that you're missing? Are there any things that you all are having challenges with? You obviously pivoted early and fast because you were in Seattle. I don't want to say an advantage. Obviously, bad things happen.
Right.
I always feel like I need to say that when I say these things. But you had somewhat of an advantage to people who were forced into remote. Obviously, companies were remote before the pandemic. But is there anything after the past 18 months that's really been a challenge for you all?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're not experiencing real remote work. We're experiencing remote work during a pandemic. And that's said a lot, but it's like, you got to realize, because we want to get together. We had a whole retreat scheduled for October where the entire company was going to be getting together in Palm Springs. And we ended up pushing it back to January because several people on our team that were not comfortable. They have small kids at home. They're just not comfortable doing it yet. And so, but we would have done that, and we would have had all these great opportunities to get together and build that trust. And like Phil, I think Brene Brown has this thing around trust where it's like you're putting marbles in the jar every day. Like every time you deliver for somebody, on time or whatever you do, Brene. You have those little interactions, you're putting marbles in. And then if like stuff happens, then you have that reserves. And I think the reserves are coming down, and it's not because we're remote. It's because there's a pandemic, but it's very hard to, extricate those two things. But I think I actually was talking to kind of my fellow leaders at my company about this. And I think one of the things that's the most difficult is not being able to celebrate in the same way. And for startups, generally, you forget to celebrate because you're never doing enough and you're always trying to get to that next milestone. And it's like very common to not look back and go, hey, good job with that, And so it's hard anyways. And then when you're remote, it's like, okay, we're all on a Zoom. It's like, shout out to Rachel for the great marketing campaign. It's just not as exciting as if you're all together and you're toasting. And so it's not as visceral, I think. And because I think we've found a way to share feedback with each other, which some people say that's hard if you're not in person, but we've found ways to do a lot of things. But I think we'd love to find new ways to celebrate that aren't like, oh, let's all get on this too. I mean, I don't know what it is. There is this thing of like humans being together, which we would be doing at our retreat, but we can't. There's the Delta variant that's in our way. So I would say that would be our biggest challenge.
I bet you that retreat was going to be awesome.
It was. Well, what we learned
I was going to crash it.
Yeah, if you want to come,
I was prepared to crash it.
Hiking and like no strategy sessions. Let's just get together and be together and celebrate each other and have fun. So that was the goal, because we have one thing we learned in this research is if you have to get together in order to like hatch your strategy or figure out what you're doing next, then you're doing something wrong. Like you should be able to get that done in the normal course of work remotely. And the get-togethers are all about that human connection, hopefully hugs. I'm a hugger, but I haven't been able to hug anybody lately.
One thing I love in my previous gig, I learned a ton in higher education because you're just around PhDs all the time, and one of the things that I loved is my colleague came up with this thing where he was like, yo, you got to ask for hugs. Like you got to ask for permission. I was like, well, what do you mean? I just roll in, Rachel, and just go for it. And he's like, you can't do that. Yeah, and front touch. Like I front touch hug. Like I'm not like a far hugger. I'm not afraid to bump bellies a little bit. And that's kind of a little weird for people. It's a little weird. But what we came up with was, are you accepting hugs today? And people were so shocked. It made it better. It made it better.
Yeah.
Try it, Rachel. Next time that you guys get together, you walk up to someone and say, "Are you accepting hugs today?" And they'll be like, "Well, yes, I am. Yes, I am."
Well, that sounds
and you just
interesting.
and then that's when you can really bring it in and even extend it a little bit and just hang on.
Just rest
No
your
hair
head on their
no-
shoulder.
Yes.
Sniff a little hair. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it beats interrupting it with handing him a piece of paper and saying, "Well, would you mind signing this waiver before I go in for it?"
Right. Anyway,
It can't be any less
it's-
awkward than that.
And I thought it was only him, and I actually went to another faculty development conference, and people were asking. It was like a thing, especially after COVID and stuff. People are uncomfortable. I mean, jokes aside, it's actually a very comforting moment because like the person's shocked first that you ask them for permission. Anyway, I'm sorry I got derailed.
Yeah,
The
I
whole
thought one
hugging
of those
is-
like cute videos online was a teacher, and they had this little chart, and it's like you could either do like high five, bump, hug, but like you would signal to her as you're like as a little student, like as entering the classroom, you'd signal which one you wanted. So you saw this thing of like she'd hug one and she'd high five one or fist bump or whatever. It was really cute. So it's like we need those little signs. Like, what do you?
Oh, the
want?
wrist bracelets. Remember when they started with that?
Yeah.
The wrist bracelets. Did you see that at conferences when the COVID first started?
Oh,
So
no.
they had wrist bracelets that said socially distancing. So
space.
yeah, I need space. I'm not shaking hands. So they had different colors and they had a different saying on it, which I thought was kind of cool, but it kind of like puts you in like this it kind of like segregates people a little bit. But
yeah.
I mean, there's
you're
always a
labeling
positive and
yourself.
negative. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it was kind of cool. Anyway, sorry.
I know.
Rick.
Now with the
It's okay.
pandemic, it's like I can't believe we ever did shake hands at conferences.
I know,
So
right?
disgusting.
It sounds gross.
Someone reaches their hand out now, you're just like, yo, you nasty. I don't want to touch your hand. It's all calm. It's all clammy and wet. It's awful.
Well, for the
Sorry.
longest time, it was so awkward because people didn't know what to do. You had one guy doing this and another guy doing this, and they were just colliding, and it's like, oh, that was awkward. Oh, let's do that again, which is even twice as awkward.
It's great.
So anyway,
It's great.
circling the wagon back.
Yes.
Rachel, my newest best beer buddy. I got a question for you.
Yes.
What advice would you give to somebody, say, in my role as a sales and marketing person? What advice would you give to somebody who is trying to get on the remote work? I don't want to say bandwagon, but who is really curious about this industry, but typically their role in their current capacity is too traditional to transform into remote work.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I feel like the context around us is changing so dramatically, where the future of work is here, I guess, is like what a lot of people are saying. But it's like there's a questioning of that. And even a few months ago where it's like we want people back into the office as soon as possible to like, I was just talking to someone who's in the recruiting space, and he was saying like all the employers he's working with, that it's just the job descriptions are just changing like on the daily. It doesn't matter. We're open to everybody in the US now. And so I think that for someone who's looking to make a shift, the timing is so great because all the job descriptions suddenly are saying remote okay. And so then it's just more of the skills that you bring to the table. Sales and marketing for beer as an example, it's like there's plenty of sales and marketing roles in companies that are hiring remote, and they're saying it's fine, you can live anywhere. So I feel like the timing is really good, and maybe things will change. Who knows, like what's happening in our world? But at the moment, it seems like it is just a complete competitive disadvantage to say you need to live in XYZ city. It's just not. It's like the candidates can go elsewhere. So I think for someone like that, it's like get out there and seize the moment in case there is some sort of backlash. To me, the genie's out of the bottle. I don't see a backlash happening. And even banking and finance and the ones that have been like the most hesitant to move into remote are realizing like, this is what it is. If we want the best talent, we need to accommodate that. So I don't know, that's not really good advice necessarily, but I think it's just like, have the confidence to say, these are the great skills I have, in beer, selling beer out in the field. I've doubled sales, or I brought in new accounts, or whatever those great bullet points are. There's nobody on the planet that would say, oh, well, that's not relevant to this other, type of sales. It is. And like someone who's been out there is already prepared to work remotely, right? Like they're already I already have these skills of being self-motivated and not needing to be in like a cube farm in order to get my work done. So to me, there's an advantage to that.
Cube farm, Kaleem.
Cube farm. The cube farm
you
again.
You guys said that.
Stop it. You listen to it. I'm the cube farm is huge. We're not giving credit to your buddy, Rick. That's us. That's remotely one. Remotely, we are one. The cube farm. You're totally right, Rachel. You're totally right. So, what I love about your comment, it's the time is now. The time is now, and your industry. There is a good chance that somebody in your industry with the same exact job title and role is going to allow you to do it remotely, because it is a talent war out there. And I think we will see some regression. Of course, we're going to see some regression as soon as we're safe to return to the office, because there's going to be, I've been talking about a honeymoon period. There was a honeymoon period for remote work, honeymoon period. So for remote work, in the first 2 months or first month, everyone loved it. Every blog was about how great it was. Everything was, this is awesome. Then about 90 days in, when you had to do homeschooling at the same time, virtual schooling, and people were not feeling it, including myself. I was like, this is not cool, and I'm a remote work advocate. And then that kind of changed. It changed. Yeah. So there's going to be a honeymoon period for when we go back to the office. But when that's over, people are going to be like, man, I want to go back to this remote thing. So there will be companies that will force your hand. But a lot of the things I've been saying are very similar, Rachel, of if we want this as an industry and as employees, we have to take a stand and go somewhere else. You may have to leave the bus that you're currently on in order to find that type of flexibility. So I am so happy you said that. Makes me feel good.
Yeah, the cube farms. Yeah. Well, and you see that in the data where it's not that, I know the Great Resignation may be a little bit overstated, but there's still people are definitely, there's a Microsoft survey where it's like they're considering changing jobs. And it's real easy because I can sit right here and I could be working anywhere. So it's like a lot of the barriers have come down, and I don't see those really going back up.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Apple tried it, and look what happened, Apple. You know what I mean? Y'all should have consulted with us first. You should have consulted with us first. We would have helped you with that.
Well, and I'm in Seattle typically, not at this moment, but Amazon they're very strong about their office culture, but they've still had to backpedal and kind of create more flexibility within that, because people have spoken, and it's like they don't want to lose talent to, it's hard to find engineers. It's hard to find, great product managers and all the roles that they need. And so if they aren't competitive in what they're offering and how work gets done, then it can be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely can. So I got a question for you. We're going to kind of shift gears a little bit because this was all great information. So I advise everyone to take notes, rewind it, play it back again, give us another play, do all of those things.
Please rewind.
Now you're aging yourself.
Ooh, yes, I am. Sorry about that.
The kids don't know about rewinding the VHS tapes.
So for all the millennials and Gen Z, what Richard was referring to was the VHS tape. It's the VHS tape. When you rented a movie, yes, you would go to a place and you would rent a movie and they would hand you this VHS tape. There would be a little message at the end of the movie that would say, please be kind and rewind. So I had to get.
And there was also a bright orange sticker on the VHS cassette box that said, be kind, please rewind.
Rick's only 28 years old, by the way.
I have a lot to learn.
We're trying to have fun on this podcast a little bit. So we're asking every guest the magic question of, can you tell us about a comical or inspiring moment you had while working remotely?
Yes, the one that comes to mind is, I'm not in this location right now. I'm at my mom's in her attic, but usually I'm at home, and we have this like really modern looking cement staircase behind where I sit and work. And I was on the phone on a Zoom with somebody, and in their minds, it was a fake background. It was a Zoom background. So in their head, it was static, and they just thought it was a photo. And then I have a little dachshund, and at one point the dachshund went up the stairs and she screamed out loud and like basically fell out of her chair because it was just like her brain had told her this is a static picture. And so when the dog went up, she like literally almost had a heart attack. And so we had a very good laugh about that.
That's
we were talking about the inspiring stuff earlier, and I think for me it's what you were just talking about like, oh, remote work, there's some benefits, and then all of a sudden there's like the homeschooling and all of that had to go on because of the pandemic. For me, it's like the people who were able to survive that with small children. I have teenagers, so they don't mind they would prefer to be ignored by me, so it's a little bit different than having those small kids that are like, mommy, while you're trying to get your work done each day. So to me, that's the inspiring thing. And I very much look forward to real remote work that isn't in the context of a pandemic.
So did she actually fall out of her chair? Because that would have been scary.
It looked like it. Her head went from like the center of the screen to like the far left corner.
Oh,
so there was it wasn't
her hair's all messed.
Reaction.
Her hair's all messed up. She's like, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, that's great.
And it was hard to get back on track to like we were talking about, for sure.
That's hilarious. And just so our listeners understand, right now you're in your mom's attic, and let me tell you, there's wood paneling on the ceiling. I mean, this is, I mean, like, yo, this looks like there was some stuff happening in the 70s back there. Sheba Weeba was happening or something up there. I mean, look at it. You got the wood panel in the ceiling. You got the calendars.
Paper calendars. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, great. Those are great stories.
Flashbacks of my younger days, just looking at the paneling.
Why? I don't even understand, like, why paneling became a thing. Like, where did they think that?
It was on the side of the station wagons too. Remember the wood?
Oh, the Woodies.
Oh my God! Stop it. That's what they were called. They were called Woodies, guy.
Yeah.
No, they were not.
Those go back to like the 1940s. Yeah, those go back a long way.
The station wagons were called Woodies. Let's get back to that. The station wagons were called Woodies.
With the wood paneling. Yes. They were back in the day. They inserted panels of wood. By the time we had our station wagons, the giant Chevrolet Celebrity station wagons, that was just like a laminate print. That wasn't real wood.
But it looked like wood panel.
It looked real. It looked real. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Rachel, do you have any questions or thoughts for us?
Totally. I love what you were saying earlier about employee engagement and how that needs to be thought essentially in this new world, and not just think about it as the old quote unquote culture and the perks that you might get at the office. Like there's just kind of a new redefinition of that. So I'd be interested in what some people call culture. How do you guys consult with your clients and that kind of thing about how to maintain that? Of course, we have our own ideas about that at Voodle, but I would love to hear, that would be my question for you, is like, what is the new culture? What is the new employee engagement? What does that look like in today's world?
Yeah, so we do like to use employee experience was the phrase.
Oh, sorry, wrong.
Yeah, employee experience. And I think the biggest thing that we've seen is establishing guidelines for communication helps. Being able to understand when to use each method of communication, because what happens is everyone just gets lost in either Slack, you don't know when to do what. A lot of the things that people are feeling that are missing, a lot of them are around communication. Consulting with someone right now where they're like, I don't know where to look, and I feel like I'm just getting inundated all the time. I get a Slack notification or a Teams notification, then I get an email, and that's copied on like 15 people, and then that email thread is huge, and then we get a video call request, and it's just so much. I think really taking a step back and coming up with an internal communication strategy, or what we also like to call like a communication decision rubric, will help clarify when and where to look for those things. And then you're ahead of the curve, Rachel. Like, as far as the other piece of getting together, having a social calendar obviously helps. Scheduling that, a social connection calendar, we like to call it. Having that scheduled ahead of time so people can plan for it further in advance, and you're already getting ready to start planning the retreats. And as soon as we're back in place, you all are good to go from what I'm hearing from you. So that's typically what we try to start with. And of course, you got to have a culture statement so that you can actually articulate what your culture is, not the ping pong tables and stuff like that. So
yeah. So like what we're doing, this TikTok for work, bringing short video into another form of communication. We've had our customers are glomming onto it. They're like, this is great. I can just share a quick video. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the TLDR. Yeah. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to send you a PowerPoint, but this is the high level, or just human connection. Like, here's my dogs and here's the funny attic I'm working out of today, or whatever it might be. And we've seen people use video to kind of fill in some of those cracks. But it's also, we do hear that now that we're remote, we're really like investing in our teams or our Slack deployment, and we want everything to happen in this certain way. Like you said, these rules of the road. So I guess if I get to have a second question for you, like I'd be interested in this idea of bringing short video into the mix. How would that fit within how you're thinking about advising people on the rules of the road of communicating, so that it's like the right tool at the right time? Obviously, our hypothesis is Slack is great for like short, here's a link and quick messaging. Zoom is great if you need to all kind of gather and share ideas. And that Voodle is great when you need to have that context and the time to think about your response and share it when it comes to maybe when you're out on a walk or whatever. People want to see that kind of context and the, what's around you and all of that. And so we feel like there's a place for us, but we're us. We think about Voodle all day. So I'd just be interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, and I know you've probably thought of this already, but in the remote work space, whether you're hybrid, fully remote, you have to have different modalities of communication. And that's why you have a decision rubric. Some of those modalities are synchronous, meaning happening at the same time. So Zoom, you're doing that at the same time. That's synchronous. A meeting is synchronous. But you also have to have asynchronous communication, right? Because you're dealing with different time zones. People need to be able to respond when they want. People are maximizing their work-life integration, maybe walking their dogs, playing with their kids during the day, getting a workout in. So to me, Voodle serves that asynchronous communication space. It's great because video, you get different, and I think even, I don't know if it was Brene or not, but like you're getting different marbles from the visual, right? You're getting different marbles from me making my face like this or smiling and stuff like that. So I think what's great about the concept is that you've limited the length of time. Not to mention a competitor of yours, but there's a competitor of yours where if you upgrade, you can make longer videos, shout out to Loom. I like Loom. Yeah. It's great because, you can have a longer video. It's cool. But what I think is great about Voodle is that it's made for short snippets. It's made for quick videos, and people can digest those quickly. I think onboarding is by far one of the best reasons to use your product. How great is that to be able to go to a page and literally watch Voodles from your team? Hi Rachel, it's nice to meet you. Can't wait to talk to you. Welcome to the team. I think that is great. I really think training, there's something in there for training, having short snippets on how you do a process when you have standard operating procedures. I think training documentation is a really, really big need that's out there when you're working remotely. So, hi Rachel, hey, by the way, this is how you do this, step 1 through 5. And I think that's like TikTok. I don't think they thought that tutorials were going to be a big piece to their platform, and they're huge. Like the Excel guys, I saw the Excel dude and I was just like, what? My mind was blown. So I think Voodle, you have so many opportunities. It was a good pivot, so kudos to you. And I think onboarding, training, social connections, there's so many great opportunities.
That training thing, I was thinking about you, Rick, because one of the things like with sales training is like the best thing you could do is like the ride along, right? Or we want to put you with the best sales guy. But the best sales guy wants to be selling. They don't always want all the newbies with them,
Right.
and I've kind of had this thought. I don't think people have used Voodle a lot for this, but it's kind of like by the field, for the field, where it's like the killer top performers could be Voodling, like quick 1 minute. I just got out of this meeting. I said this thing. It worked really well. You guys should try it, and kind of democratize that like top sales guy or gal.
What a great
sorry.
idea.
Absolutely.
So
Allow people to upvote.
Yeah.
Allow people to upvote
Yeah.
the best ones to the top. I'm sorry. Are we just giving you free feature sets advice? Oh my goodness.
That way we can get all the product people at Voodle to listen to the
That's
podcast.
right.
Because I'll be like, there's some secret product,
let the
focus
company
groups going
upvote
on
so
here.
you can see the best sales videos rise to the top.
And have
That's a
awards
really good
given
one.
out by management, but they have to pay for them. They get the like
There
the
you
silver
go.
award and the gold award on Reddit. People are buying that stuff, and it doesn't mean anything. So why not make it work in the workplace?
Exactly. We actually have
Cool.
a brewer in North Carolina called Legion Brewing, and they use Voodle. They try to get every employee to, when they're in a grocery store, to look for the beer and make it look good. So they merchandise, and then they take a quick Voodle to prove that they pulled the cans forward and got stuff out of the back or whatever it is.
What a great idea. I've
It's
actually
activated every employee.
I've sold Legion. I know those guys. They're a great outfit. I'm right in Charlotte. Where
Do you
they
know
are,
Russell
so.
Derby?
I haven't met him, but I know the name. Yeah, that's great.
awesome.
What a
That's
small
amazing.
world.
world.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a small world.
Small world.
You see that, listeners? You come on our podcast, you get connected.
Yes. Juicy J. It's a hazy IPA. Go out and buy it if you're in Charlotte. Well, listen, Rachel, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And if you don't mind, from now on, I'm just going to call you my beer friend.
Yeah, we can be beer buddies, and as long as you Voodle me that message, I'll for sure listen
Well
to you.
done,
Oh my
Rachel.
gosh.
Well done.
Yes. Oh, you are a pro. You are an absolute pro. Listen, how do we find you on social media, online? Where can our listeners find you?
Me personally or Voodle, the company? Or
Either
Let's
both?
go with you personally. Let's go with you personally first. Let's go with you.
I'm mainly a LinkedIn person,
Cool.
so that's probably the best place. So Rachel Lanham. Voodle, we have kind of we're a lot on LinkedIn. We have our own website, but we also are starting to get on TikTok. It's actually a great channel for us.
Interesting.
And it really is about the future workforce and Gen Z and young millennials.
Fantastic.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Until next
All
time.
right, are you guys waivers? I always wave.
Yeah, big time.
My
Big
newest
time
beer
waivers.
buddy. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay. Bye, you guys. Thank you so
Take care.
much.
That's awesome.
You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.